Good morning from the hills between Jerusalem and the Dead Sea here in Israel. I'm so honored to be with you here today at the Faith-Driven Investor Conference, and so thankful to the organizers for inviting me to share with you the wisdom of the Hebrew Bible and how it applies to our investing and economy today. Right here, right where I'm standing, is where Abraham separated from his nephew Lot. This is the spot. Why did they separate? In order to understand this, we need to go back to the beginning of the story of Abraham. Abraham comes south from Haran up there in the north. He comes down to the hills outside of Jerusalem, Bethel, Hebron, where he settles. And Abraham doesn't come alone. He comes with his wife Sarai. And the Hebrew Bible tells us that he comes with his nephew Lot. And it tells us also that he comes with his possessions. That is not a small detail. The possessions, his wealth, is actually the Leitvort, the leading word of all of the story of Abraham. It's mentioned 7 times, his possessions. We know one biographical fact about his nephew Lot, and that is that he is an orphan. The previous portion tells us that Lot's father, Haran, passed away, making Lot an orphan. This is not just an orphan in the context of let's take care of widows and orphans. This is a question of people who do not have what it takes to compete in the economy, to earn an honest and decent living. Abraham comes south from Haran. He comes down to the land of Canaan with all of these possessions, and then a recession, a financial crisis hits. In the words of the Hebrew Bible, it's a famine. A famine in ancient times is like a recession and a financial crisis today. And Abraham takes his family and takes his wealth, what was left of it, and goes down to the land of Egypt. And something unbelievable happens in Egypt. Abraham emerges more wealthy. The Hebrew Bible tells us Abraham was heavily laden with sheep and cattle, silver and gold. But something else happens in Egypt, and that is Abraham empowers his orphan nephew Lot to become wealthy. The Torah tells us also Lot, who walked with Abraham, had sheep, cattle, and tents. Abraham down in Egypt uses his networks, uses his skills to empower his nephew to also become wealthy. I want to contrast for a moment the Abrahamic approach to this to the great 20th century industrialist, Andrew Carnegie. He wrote an important treatise on wealth in which he describes that it is the job of the wealthy, called the industrialist class, to paternalistically take care of those less fortunate. And while that's important, it's not the whole story. The whole story is in Abraham, empowering others through skill building, through network building, through training, through education, through empowerment, and through values to enable other people to be equally as successful. Also Lot, who walked with Abraham, had sheep, cattle, and tents. And then something disheartening happens. They come up to these hilltops and they split. So the Hebrew Bible tells us that there was a fight, a quarrel, between the shepherds of Abraham and the shepherds of Lot. There's tons of grazing areas around here. Why did they fight? They were arguing about the purpose of wealth, about how to spread the wealth, about how to empower other people. Abraham had a view that empowering other people to be successful grew the economy, built values, built a society of solidarity. Lot, on the other hand, was selfish. How do we know? Because he stood up here and Abraham said to him, if you go right, I'll go left. If you go left, I'll go right. And Lot lifts up his eyes and he looks down here. At that time, it was lush. It was fertile before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. In fact, the Hebrew Bible tells us it was like the garden of God, like the land of Egypt. The garden of God reminds us of the very fertile Garden of Eden, in which everything was supplied to Adam and Eve. And Lot wanted that. That lit Lot's imagination on fire because he remembered how much wealth he accumulated in Egypt. and how little responsibility he had in that foreign country. Ultimately, though, God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because a society built on the accumulation of wealth behind high hedges and without empowering other people is a society that disintegrates and becomes like sulfur. That's what was left here. It's what left a barren area, a Dead Sea, because people didn't empower other people to become wealthy and successful, and instead were selfish, wanting all of the garden, all of the fertile area for themselves. Capitalism at its core is about the possession of private property. It's about the ability to do with my money what I choose. But what I choose is an ethical choice. Lot had those possessions. They were his. What he chose to do with them, though, was to hide behind the hedges of Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot leaves Abraham, and Abraham travels to Bethel, the place where his altar was previously. He returns to the roots of the ethics that God demanded of him as the father of the three great monotheistic faiths, and as the father of the people of Israel who would inhabit a land and build a country and an economy that must be based on those eternal values, on those eternal principles of the Bible. The Hebrew Bible tells us, very importantly, that all three of the forefathers had wealth. This is on purpose. It's to tell the generations that we want people to be economically successful. We want them to use that economic success to empower others, just like Abraham will empower Lot, and Isaac will have business dealings with Abimelech, and Jacob will have business dealings both in his father-in-law Laban's house and ultimately the people of Shechem and others. And even Joseph, in the story of Genesis, will become the secretary of the treasury, the finance minister of Egypt, enabling Egypt to get through a famine, an economic recession, even a depression. This is a fundamental part of the Bible. Our economic approach, our desire to empower others, and the message of the forefathers to the billions of people and multitudes of generations that followed them, that we must build an economy based on solidarity, ethics, and mutual empowerment. And so when we look at the modern economy, we need to have the same thoughts that Abraham had, his same thoughts about Lot. We live in a network economy today. We live in a technologically advanced economy today. The skills gap is growing and the wealth gaps are growing. Redistribution is not an option. It doesn't solve anything. Empowerment, a covenant of empowerment to enable other people to be successful, to invest in them and invest our networks in them, to strap them on our shoulders and invest in their apprenticeship and in mentoring them to help them have skills so that they can grow independently, just like Lot grew independently. And critically, a commitment of faith-based people to values and principles that are eternal. We must take our faith and have faith in humanity, faith in other people, invest in them and with them to empower them. Come to Israel, because right here is where covenantal capitalism is being built. Right here in the startup nation, where technology is advancing our economy, creating wealth, but those same entrepreneurs are investing in empowering other people and helping them rise up, helping them become more successful through skills, through networks, and through the economic empowerment. We landed here, picking up here in Tel Aviv on Rothschild Boulevard, the heart of the startup nation, where values create real economic value, not just for the people of Israel, but for the world at large. Yuval Samet, CEO of RiseUp. How do values create value at RiseUp?
At RiseUp, we are creating a world in which anyone can achieve financial power. And if you want to empower anyone to achieve financial power, you really need to be humble. You need to learn what are the needs of the human being and use technology and data in order to enable those. And this is where the values and technology are connected in innovation, giving financial power to people.
Thank you, Yuval.
Thanks, Michael.
Tamar, you run community at RiseUp. How does community enable people to rise up financially? And how does the value or values of a community happen here in Israel?
Well, first of all, we see that as a community, you can achieve anything, and you can actually even grow financially when you talk to each other, when we come together as a unit. And Israelis are really good at doing that. We know how to support each other and help each other through hard times. So if we can get that going everywhere around the world, I'm sure that that's something we can share.
And help everybody rise up financially globally so they can afford the $500 medical expense, which is so biblical in its nature.
Definitely.
Thank you. Yonatan, where does the Bible and Israel's heritage meet you in your daily job of democratizing healthcare?
One of the things we say in our morning prayer is Modani, right? Thank you for, kind of reinstating my soul. But immediately the next paragraph is about our body and the way that, it's so fortunate that it just functions, right? Every morning. And so for me, this is a daily question, and that sort of comes from the Bible. It comes from my faith. It comes from the kind of knowledge that this is not something you can take for granted. Not for oneself, not for the family, not for the extended community. And if we can play a role in, helping people have better, preventative health care, right? So knowing when something is wrong early on so that they don't end up in life-threatening conditions, that is a commitment that, connects to every morning when I do my tefillin. It connects to those roots.
Together as people of faith, we have an opportunity to craft the future of capitalism, to grow the pie and empower other people to be successful, creating a society filled with more solidarity. That is our challenge and our opportunity. We need to take the messages of Abraham and invest them in our modern economy. Thanks for being with me. Shalom.